Okay, so now basically what we have is all my browns are laid in, and where to go next would be completely up to you, the artist. We have our slight crescent moon with the eclipse coming over it. We have all of our little chakras on our life tree. We also have our grass, our grassy knoll, if you will. Then as far as the detail in the tree, my tree of life is actually, there's a figure of a female drawn into it who's actually going to be giving birth to a life form here. And as you layer things forward, the moon, my chakras, and my grassy hill are basically all in the same plane. So I could do any one of those as long as you continue building on things forward. But I like also to work from top to bottom. That way, if something does drip down here, you're not going to drip on something you've already painted down here. At this point, you're really not going to be using very watery paint, so that should not be an issue. But you do have, technicalities from time to time. So, what I'm going to do at this point is paint in my moon, and then I'll work on my chakras, and then I'll work on my grassy hill. And then the infant, haven't entirely come up with the color scheme for that yet, so that is just going to kind of sit there, and when I'm ready for that, I will paint it. Okay, so for my moon, I applied a Titanite yellow, which is a yellow, cadmium yellow and Titan white, titanium white mixture, basically. Which is kind of actually very yellow. I didn't want it quite so yellow, so once that dried, I went over it again with just titanium white to dull it down a little bit, and that's basically the color I want, and that's fine. And now I'm going to move on to my chakras. I'm laying in green for my single leaf in my chakras. Just mixed a little cadmium yellow medium hue with some of my cyan blue. I have an entire slew of pre-made green colors. None of them are natural looking. They're great for other things, but to do any type of nature, I always like to mix my own greens because the greens that come never cut it, and I find that this same in acrylics and oils both. So I'm just laying down a base color, and again, you always want to avoid just sticking your hand in wet paint. So if you're right-handed, always work from left to right. If you're left-handed, always work from right to left. That way you're greatly decreasing the chances. Okay, just laid out a simple coat, very quick, very simple. Gonna let it dry before I come back and start shading my leaves to make them look a little more three-dimensional and pop. And then I'll get on to my actual lotus flowers and the chakras. shading, basically what I've done, because the complementary color to green is red, I've just added a touch of, actually I mixed two reds, naphthol red and cadmium red light hue, and mix those together, and then added just a touch of that to my pre-made green, or my pre-mixed green that I mixed earlier, and going in and doing my shading first, of course, dark to light, and then I'll go in after this and do some highlights with some lighter greens and yellows. Also a good rule of thumb, especially when highlighting over an already painted section, a thinner paint is always going to stick better to your canvas, or a thicker paint, or an already painted section, but don't make it so watery that it runs, just enough so that it glides on in the proper fashion that you would like. Okay, so the basics of my leaves are there. I'll probably do a little more detail in them as I go along, and also in my tree. Usually at the end of a painting I go back through and touch things up just a little bit, but as long as you layer things properly, you're always going to get that 3D effect. Now that I've gotten that down, I've kind of gone in and just scumbled a little bit of white, really dry, into my chakras, and now I'm just basically going to go through and color in my lotus flower with the appropriate colors.